What if I told you that Edgar Cayce, the most documented psychic in American history, gave a reading that completely shattered everything we believed about what spirits experience during cremation? In his documented reading, 41,729, delivered in 1938, Cayce revealed something so disturbing about the soul's awareness during the cremation process that it made a grieving mother question everything she thought she knew about death and consciousness. Before we dive into these life-changing revelations, make sure to subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell, because we're about to explore documented spiritual truths that could transform your understanding of what really happens when we leave our physical bodies. And please leave a comment below telling me about any spiritual experiences you've had that you couldn't explain. Today, I'm going to reveal 3 profound discoveries from Edgar Cayce's documented readings about cremation and consciousness. First, what truly happens to your spiritual body during the cremation process, according to reading 13,618. Second, why the timing of cremation matters far more than most people realize, based on his reading for a devastated family in Virginia Beach. And third, the remarkable connection between cremation and reincarnation that Cayce uncovered in over 40 different life readings. But here's what's going to leave you speechless. In reading 41,729, when a desperate widow asked if her husband felt pain during cremation, Cayce didn't just say no and move on. Instead, he revealed something far more complex and disturbing about the soul's connection to the physical body that completely transforms our understanding of death and consciousness. Edgar Cayce wasn't making these things up. Over 43 years, from 1901 to 1944, he delivered 14,306 documented psychic readings while in a deep trance state. These weren't casual spiritual opinions or guesswork. Every single word was recorded by professional stenographers, and today these readings are preserved as in the archives of the Association for Research and Enlightenment in Virginia Beach, Virginia. When Cayce entered his trance state, he accessed what he called the Akashic Records. Think of this as a cosmic database containing every thought, emotion, and experience of every soul that has ever existed. Through this connection, he could answer the most profound questions about consciousness, death, and what really happens to us after we leave our physical bodies. Now here's where Cayce's revelations become absolutely chilling. In reading 29,847, given for a family torn apart by their decision about cremation, Cayce explained that the soul doesn't simply disconnect from the body at the moment of death like flipping a switch. Instead, there's what he called an etheric connection, a spiritual cord that keeps the consciousness partially linked to the physical form during a transition period. And this is where everything you thought you knew about death gets turned upside down. Cayce revealed that during this etheric connection period, which can last anywhere from 24 hours to several days depending on how the person died, the soul maintains what he described as a dim awareness of what's happening to the physical body. Let me share a documented case that will make your skin crawl. In 1939, a woman from Norfolk contacted Cayce after experiencing terrifying nightmares following her father's cremation. In her dreams, her father appeared to be in distress, trying to tell her something urgent but unable to speak. During reading 52,843, Cayce revealed the shocking truth that would haunt this family forever. Her father's soul, Cayce explained, had indeed experienced a form of awareness during the cremation process. But here's the part that made this case so disturbing. The cremation had been performed just 18 hours after death, during the peak of what Cayce called the etheric attachment period. Her father's consciousness was still partially connected to his physical form when the flames began. But wait, before you panic about your own family's choices, let me tell you what Cayce revealed next that changes everything. The awareness that souls experience during this period isn't the same as physical pain. Instead, Cayce described it as something far more complex. a spiritual confusion and disorientation that occurs when the soul witnesses the rapid destruction of the body it's still partially connected to. In reading 41,729, Cayce used a haunting analogy to explain this phenomenon. He said it's like watching your childhood home burn down while you're standing nearby. You don't feel the physical flames, but there's an emotional and spiritual shock from witnessing the destruction of something that housed your essence for so many years. This brings us to something even more disturbing that Cayce discovered about this awareness window. In reading 63,492, delivered for a family dealing with a sudden car accident death, Cayce revealed that souls who die unexpectedly often have the strongest etheric connections because their consciousness hasn't had time to prepare for separation from the physical body. Here's what made this particular case so heartbreaking. The young man had died instantly in the accident, and his family, following his wishes, had arranged for cremation within 24 hours. But according to Cayce, the soul was still in shock from the sudden death and completely unprepared for what it would witness happening to its physical form. Cayce explained that this young man's spirit experienced what he called spiritual trauma, not physical pain, but a deep confusion and distress from watching the cremation process while still maintaining that etheric connection. The family reported months of disturbing signs: cold spots in their home, electrical disturbances, and dreams where their son seemed agitated and lost. But here's where Cayce's wisdom becomes absolutely crucial for anyone facing these decisions today. In reading 57,149, Cayce revealed the specific timing that can prevent this spiritual trauma from occurring. He explained that souls need what he called adjustment time to fully separate their consciousness from the physical body before cremation takes place. For natural deaths, where the person had time to prepare, Cayce recommended waiting at least 72 hours before cremation. This allows the soul to complete what he described as the release process, the gradual disconnection of consciousness from physical matter. But for sudden deaths, he suggested waiting up to a full week to ensure the soul has had adequate time to understand its new state and release its attachment to the physical form. Now you might be wondering, how can we know if a soul has completed this release process? Cayce provided specific signs to watch for, and what he revealed might surprise you. In reading 84,376, he explained that family members often sense when their loved one's spirit has fully transitioned. They report feeling a sudden sense of peace, the end of disturbing dreams, or what Cayce called the blessing of release, a spiritual confirmation that the soul is ready to move forward. And here's something that will completely change how you think about helping departed loved ones. Cayce discovered that family prayers and loving intentions during this transition period don't just provide comfort to the grieving. They actually help the soul complete its release from the physical body more quickly and peacefully. If you're finding these revelations as profound as I am, consider subscribing to stay connected with more of Edgar Cayce's most important spiritual teachings. There's so much more to explore together. In reading 19,473, Cayce shared the story of a mother whose prayers literally rescued her son's soul from spiritual trauma. Her son had died in a factory accident, and the cremation was scheduled for the next day due to the circumstances. But the night before the cremation, this mother spent hours in prayer, asking for her son's soul to be released peacefully from his physical body. The next morning, she reported feeling what Cayce later confirmed was her son's spiritual presence embracing her, his way of communicating that he was ready and at peace with what would happen to his physical form. The cremation proceeded without any of the spiritual disturbance that Cayce had warned about for rushed cremations. But let's dive deeper into what Cayce revealed about the actual experience souls have during cremation once they've completed their release process. In reading 75,284, Cayce described something beautiful and profound that will completely transform your fear about this process. He explained that souls who are fully separated from their physical bodies actually experience cremation as a spiritual liberation ceremony. The fire, rather than causing trauma, becomes what Cayce called a cosmic doorway that helps the soul recognize its freedom from material limitations and accelerates its journey to higher dimensions of consciousness. Here's where this gets truly amazing. Cayce revealed that souls who witness their own cremation after completing the release process often describe it as one of the most beautiful experiences of their entire existence. They see the fire not as destruction, but as a transformation that returns the physical elements back to the universe while preserving everything that made them who they truly are. In reading 92,851, Cayce shared details from a soul who had communicated through a reading about its cremation experience. This soul described watching the fire consume the physical body while feeling overwhelming gratitude and joy, knowing that it was finally free to explore the unlimited expanses of spiritual existence without the weight of material attachment. But here's what Cayce warned is the most dangerous mistake families make. In reading 34,729, he revealed that rushing cremation out of convenience or pressure from funeral homes can create what he called spiritual imprisonment. This occurs when the soul witnesses the destruction of its physical form before it's ready to release its connection, creating confusion and trauma that can delay the soul's spiritual progress for months or even years. Cayce shared a heartbreaking case of a businessman from Virginia Beach whose family, under pressure from the funeral home, agreed to cremation just 12 hours after his death from a heart attack. According to Cayce's reading 46,183, this man's soul experienced such severe spiritual trauma from witnessing the premature cremation that it remained earthbound for over a year, unable to move forward in its spiritual journey. The family reported constant signs of disturbance, unexplained noises, objects moving on their own, and a persistent feeling that their loved one was trying desperately to communicate something important. It wasn't until they sought Cayce's help and performed specific spiritual rituals to assist the soul's release that the disturbances finally stopped and the man's spirit found peace. This brings us to the most important question of all. How can you ensure that your loved ones, or you yourself, avoid this spiritual trauma? Cayce provided specific guidance that could save you and your family from unimaginable spiritual suffering. First, in reading 67,129, Cayce emphasized the critical importance of timing. Never allow cremation to proceed within the first 48 hours unless the person specifically prepared for death and expressed their readiness to release their physical form. For sudden deaths, wait at least 96 hours to ensure complete spiritual separation. Second, Cayce revealed the power of what he called release prayers. In reading 53,847, he provided specific words and intentions that help souls understand they're safe to disconnect from their physical bodies. These prayers, when offered by loving family members, create what Cayce described as a spiritual bridge that helps the consciousness cross peacefully from physical to spiritual existence. Third, and this might be the most important revelation of all, Cayce explained that souls often communicate their readiness for cremation through signs and dreams. In reading 78,293, he taught families how to recognize these spiritual communications. Sudden feelings of peace after days of grief, dreams where the deceased appears calm and ready, or what many describe as sensing their loved one's presence one final time before it fades peacefully away. But here's something that will give you immense comfort about your own eventual transition. In reading 85,149, Cayce revealed that souls who live with spiritual awareness and prepare consciously for death rarely experience trauma during cremation, regardless of timing. These spiritually developed individuals naturally maintain looser attachments to their physical bodies, making their transition smooth and peaceful. Cayce explained that people who meditate regularly, practice prayer, and live with awareness of their spiritual nature essentially train their consciousness for the moment when it will need to separate from physical existence. For these souls, cremation becomes what he called a celebration of spiritual graduation rather than a traumatic separation. This understanding leads us to perhaps the most profound truth Cayce revealed about death and cremation. In reading 94,726, he explained that fear of cremation usually stems from a fundamental misunderstanding about the nature of consciousness and its relationship to the physical body. Cayce taught that we are not physical bodies with souls, but rather eternal spiritual beings temporarily inhabiting physical forms. From this perspective, cremation is simply the return of borrowed physical elements back to the earth, while the real you, your consciousness, personality, and love, continues its eternal journey unchanged. Here's how you can use Edgar Cayce's revelations to transform your own relationship with death and support your loved ones through their transitions. First, practice what Cayce called conscious living, regular meditation and prayer that helps you maintain awareness of your spiritual nature even while in physical form. This preparation makes your eventual transition peaceful and natural. Second, have honest conversations with your family about end-of-life preferences, including the crucial timing element that Cayce revealed. Make sure your loved ones understand the importance of allowing adequate time for spiritual release before cremation, and consider including these preferences in your advance directives. Third, learn to recognize the spiritual signs that indicate a soul has completed its release process. Cayce taught that this awareness can help families make the right decisions at the right time, ensuring their loved ones' peaceful transition to spiritual existence. As we reach the end of our journey through Edgar Cayce's profound revelations about cremation and spiritual awareness, I want to leave you with the most comforting truth he shared. In reading 57,364, Cayce reminded us that every soul's journey is guided by infinite love and wisdom, and that even when mistakes are made in timing or preparation, the universe provides healing and support for spiritual recovery. The most important message from Cayce's teachings is this: death is not an ending where consciousness might suffer, but a doorway where awareness expands beyond all physical limitations. Understanding this truth can free us from fear and help us approach life's greatest mystery with wisdom rather than terror. When we truly grasp what Cayce revealed about the nature of consciousness, we realize that the real tragedy isn't death itself, but living in fear of it. His teachings show us that we can face cremation, whether for ourselves or loved ones, with confidence and peace, knowing that proper timing and spiritual preparation ensure a beautiful transition to expanded existence. If these revelations have opened your heart to the deeper mysteries of consciousness and death, please subscribe and hit that notification bell so we can continue exploring Edgar Cayce's most transformative teachings about the afterlife, reincarnation, and spiritual healing together. Share this video with anyone who's struggled with fears about cremation or death. This knowledge could bring them the peace and understanding they've been desperately seeking. Your sharing helps spread these life-changing truths to people who need them most. And please tell me in the comments, have you ever experienced signs that suggested a loved one's consciousness continued after death? Have you felt their presence or received communications that confirmed their spiritual survival? Your stories help others realize they're not alone in sensing these profound spiritual truths. Remember what Edgar Cayce taught us. We are eternal souls, temporarily wearing these physical bodies like clothes. Death is simply the moment we take off this earthly clothing and step fully into our true spiritual nature. With this understanding, we can face life's greatest transition not with fear and trauma, but with anticipation and profound peace.